Playoff hockey is back in Philadelphia tonight. The Wells Fargo Center will be an electric atmosphere as the Flyers come home for a Game 3. They're in a 2-0 hole, so we need to see if they can bounce back and steal one in Game 3 in a do-or-die game. And now joining us on the hotline is a former NHL goaltender, knows what it's like to win here in Philadelphia, and now doing a spectacular job as an analyst for NBC and NBC Sports. You know him as Boucher, and that is our good friend, Brian Boucher. Boucher, what's happening, man?
Not much. Just recovering from last night's games, getting ready for tonight's games. The most fun time of the year, playoff time.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching you last night. You had the overtime game with the Islanders and the Panthers, and then you had that late game as Anaheim goes down once again. But you were watching the Flyers over the weekend, and you know what it's like to allow in a bad goal. Every goaltender has done it in their career. Steve Mason, that's a tough one. That's going to be on blooper reels for years to come. First off, how does he let that one in? And then from a goalie standpoint, how do you rebound from that?
Well, how does he let it in? I mean, it's a fluke thing, first of all, and he probably took his eye off it for a split second, and the result was it missed his stick, went through his legs. You know, there's times when you probably would take your eye off the puck, and yet it would still hit your pads. So, an unfortunate break for Steve Mason. It's one of those things that happens from time to time. You know, obviously in the playoffs it's magnified, and everybody's watching. A tough break for Steve Mason, but how do you battle back from it? You got to try your best to just park it, and that's the mindset of a goaltender. Whether it's a goal like that or whether or not you give up a goal, shorthanded, you have to have a short memory, and you got to try and focus on, the next shot that's on you and making the next save and giving your team a chance to win. Easier said than done at times. There's no doubt. When you get to the National Hockey League level and you're looking at, comparing goaltenders that are good to the great ones, oftentimes it's the mental toughness that separates the good from the great. And right now, Steve Mason is going to be challenged, no doubt mentally. He has to find a way to forget about that goal against. The fact of the matter is the Flyers only scored one goal in that hockey game, so they weren't going to win that game anyhow. He needs to somehow park it, move on, and have a great game here in Game 3.
I agree with you. They're not giving him enough help, and he's been sensational down the stretch for the Flyers, and even made some big saves in both Game 1 and Game 2. You can't let that in, but really the big difference maker in this series so far, and I get it, the Capitals are a superior hockey team, but the Flyers are just not playing disciplined hockey, and they're giving them too many 5-on-4 chances on the power play. How do the Flyers play a more disciplined brand of hockey and keep the Caps off the power play?
Wow, I mean that to me is a mindset. That's a focus. Going in, you have to be ready to face adversity. You have to be ready to know that you're going to be challenged physically, and to not retaliate. I think that's all mental toughness as well. Heading into a hockey game, you have to know that the other team's going to try and get underneath your skin, and that you have to find ways to stay disciplined. So that's in your control. Then there's other times when the Capitals could probably make great plays because they're a great offensive team and get good looks, and you have to take necessary penalties. So I think the key for the Flyers is stay away from the unnecessary stuff. We saw in Game 1 Wayne Simmons engaging Tom Wilson there. Probably a case where he could have been more disciplined in that scenario. When you're playing a team like the Caps, you just can't afford to put them on the power play. They just got too many weapons. They scored 2 power play goals last game. So you don't want to give them 2, 3, 4, 5 power plays a game. And at the same time, I think the Flyers power play needs to pick it up as well. They've not carried their weight in this series. They've had some opportunities, especially in Game 1 in the early going, and I think that's what was the difference in that Game 1. And they had some quality chances in Game 2 on the power play and didn't convert. So they got to find a way to make the Capitals pay, and they got to stay more disciplined and not put the Caps offense on the power play.
You're exactly right. In that Game 1, they had some early power plays, couldn't convert. Game 2, they also had some power plays and weren't able to get the job done. And that's just a big credit to the defense of the Caps and also the goalie in Holtby, who's going to win the Vezina this year. And he stopped 19 shots in that first period. The Flyers actually outshot the Caps by a final of 42-23 in that Game 2. Does a period of doubt just starts to creep into those Flyers players' mind to try to solve Holtby? Because they have to get an early one tonight to try to ruffle him a little bit.
Well, it's not so much that they have to get one early. I think, look, it may take 55 minutes before they can finally solve Braden Holtby. The key will be to defend well, and try and stay within striking distance at all times. If the Capitals get up, by a couple of goals and you can't solve Braden Holtby, then I think that seed of doubt will creep into the Flyers' mind. So I think you got to be patient in the playoffs. It's about not cracking. You got to find a way. You never know when you're going to get that opportunity. You never know when you're going to get a turning point in a hockey game. If you look at the other games around the league, the game 2 in St. Louis, Chicago, there was an offside right there that ended up going against St. Louis, and Chicago came back and won. If you look at the game last night, Florida, New York Islanders, offside Jonathan Huberdeau. The Islanders then go on a 5-on-3 and tie the game 3-3. There are turning points in every game, in every series, and you have to stay patient. Like I say, sometimes it's going to take 50, 55 minutes, but if you beat yourself before you get to those situations, then shame on you. The Flyers have to do a good job of keeping putting pucks to the net, try to make life miserable for Braden Holtby, try and get better looks. I mean, they got to try and get inside and stay away from the perimeter, get better looks at Braden Holtby, and cash in on your opportunities. That's the name of the game in the playoffs. When you get chances, you got to try and bury. They haven't done that so far.
We're talking to former NHL goaltender who spent a large majority of his professional career in Philadelphia and is now an analyst for NBC and NBC Sports Network, and that's Brian Boucher. And Brian, everyone knows how physical these playoffs have the ability to be, and these playoffs have not disappointed thus far. All 18 skaters are forced to go into dirty areas, lay out some big-time checks. From a goalie standpoint, what changes in the mindset? Because obviously you're not laying out any big checks when you're in between the pipes.
Well, for the goaltender, that doesn't change any of your mindset. The physical play is left up to the skaters on the ice. As a goaltender, maybe a bit more traffic in front of the net. There may be some bumps with the goaltender. You got to talk to the referee, make them aware of the situation. They're looking to protect the goaltenders and make sure that they're able to do their jobs. I think for the goaltender, the focus is giving your team a chance to win, making the saves that you're supposed to make, and occasionally making a save that maybe you're not expected to make. That's the difference for a goaltender. The mindset doesn't change because it's physical out there. There's no doubt everything's magnified in the playoffs, and you fight for every inch of the ice, and that's what makes it so exciting. But for the goaltender, it's all about giving your team a chance to win, making the saves you need to make in order to give your team a chance to win.
And I know every crowd and every fan base thinks that they're the loudest in the entire NHL, but what do you expect the scene to be today in Philadelphia, with it being the first playoff game of the postseason in Philadelphia, as well as the first game in Philadelphia since the passing of Mr. Snyder?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an emotional day today, an emotional night in Philadelphia. There's no doubt. The Flyer fans are one of the best, if not the best, in the NHL as far as supporting their team and being an advantage playing at the Wells Fargo Center. I expect that place to be rocking tonight. And obviously with the passing of Mr. Snyder, like I said, there's so much emotion involved in what he's done for this city, what he did for hockey in the city, youth hockey. I mean, he's just done so much, and the players recognize this. The players want to have a huge effort tonight. There's no doubt that they realize this is a big opportunity. And look, the Flyers would have loved to come back to Philadelphia and had maybe stole a game or two in Washington. It wasn't the case. But the fact of the matter is, if the Flyers can hold serve here at home, take care of their business, they can creep right back into the series. This is a huge game tonight. I expect the Flyers to come out strong. I expect the crowd to be into it. Should be a fun game.
All the way from Bernie to even players on the rosters now, like a Shane Gostisbehere or Wayne Simmons. Ed Snyder just had a special connection with his players. You played in Philadelphia for quite some time. What was your relationship like with Ed Snyder?
Well, I mean, it's one of an owner and a player, I guess you could say. No doubt, the ultimate respect for Mr. Snyder and the opportunity that he gave me. Look, when you get drafted in the National Hockey League, you have no idea where you're going to go. And I was fortunate enough to get drafted by the Philadelphia Flyers and be put in a situation, like this, where you play for an owner that gives everything to his club and everything to his players, and does so much for the city, and what he's done, on the philanthropic side of things, with the Snyder Youth Hockey Foundation. Look, I mean, he was a great man who did a lot for all of us players. I enjoyed my time with him. There's no doubt. When he came into the locker room after games and you could see the joy in his face after a big victory, it means a lot to a player. It's almost like you're pleasing a parent to some degree when you play well and do something well. And when you didn't play well, you knew you disappointed him and you felt bad about it. So I played on a lot of teams, and I can honestly say that there was not another owner in the National Hockey League that I played for that cared more about his players and showed his face around the team more than Mr. Snyder. He was there all the time, win or lose. And as a player, you appreciate the fact that you got a guy that puts his heart and soul into a club, and it means so much to him. So it's definitely an honor and a privilege to play for him, and I think it's going to be an emotional night tonight. I hope the Flyers really respond in a positive way and can come through with a big victory here tonight.
We're spending a few more minutes with the sensational Brian Boucher, who does a fantastic job now for NBC and NBC Sports. And in those games like you have tonight, you expect your captain to show up. Claude didn't play well last time the Flyers were in the playoffs up against the Rangers. Has been very quiet so far in the first two games. How do they get the captain going?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, I mean, you need your best players to be your best players in the playoffs. And I know it sounds so cliche, but it's really the truth. You can't rely on, your depth players to carry you. Claude Giroux can be better. It's a time of year where you got to fight for every inch of the ice, like I say. And the thing about the Flyers team is they're not the deepest of clubs when it comes to an offensive attack. And now with Sean Couturier out, it alters things in their lineup. Braden Shen has to move to the center ice position on the second line, and creates a bit of a gap, I guess you could say, in the depth for the Flyers. So the Capitals are looking to zero in on guys like Claude Giroux, guys like Jake Voracek, Wayne Simmons, and if you shut down those guys, you enhance your chances of winning. So it's going to be a tough go for Claude Giroux. I think the key is when the Flyers get on the power play, and Claude Giroux is a big part of that power play, he's got to find a way to get the puck to the back of the net, whether he's setting up Gostisbehere or anybody else. They got to find ways to score, and I think if they do that, you may see a different side of the Capitals where maybe they have to chase the game a little bit and take chances and may open things up a little bit more for Claude Giroux. So if you get power play opportunities, you got to cash in. That may help Claude Giroux, spur some more offense.
And so far in these playoffs, every series has played at least 2 games. Even some series have played already 3 games. I know you mentioned that depth players can't carry teams through the playoffs, but who has been the unsung hero or most impressive player in this postseason, especially when you look at a guy like maybe a Riley Smith for the Florida Panthers?
Yeah, that second line for the Florida Panthers has been really good. Riley Smith has been dynamite for the Florida Panthers. Yet, they find themselves in a 2-1 hole there. It's still early right now in the playoffs. You look to San Jose; they're being carried predominantly by one line. The Pavelski line's been really good. Still early to tell who's carrying the load. I thought Pittsburgh in Game 1, Patrick Hornquist was great, but there were some other unsung heroes. Guys like Connor Sheary were good in Game 1 for Pittsburgh. However, that series is now tied up. So it's hard to pinpoint any depth players that are making a difference right now. I think it's pretty much a top 6 forwards on a lot of teams that seem to be doing a job for all their clubs.
And you just mentioned how San Jose is being carried by one line. They lead LA 2-0. Nashville leads Anaheim 2-0. Those are 2 different home series that the road team won the first 2 games. What does that say about home ice advantage in the start of these playoffs thus far?
Yeah, it goes to show that matchups sometimes don't mean all that much, and I think a lot of people want to make a story out of who you're matching up against who, and really at the end of the day what it boils down to is, are you going to get the job done? And are you going to compete? Are you going to not take no for an answer in the playoffs? And I think you're starting to see that with the parity that we have in this league, that it doesn't matter where you play. The thing about the San Jose Sharks is they've been a great road team all year long. They've really struggled playing at the Shark Tank in San Jose. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I expect a big pushback from the LA Kings tonight. They're a team that I think is underachieved. They're hurting right now because they don't have Alec Martinez, and I think their defense is a bit depleted with who they got back there. But Nashville, I'm a bit surprised at the fact that they're up 2-0 on Anaheim right now. I'm really impressed by the way Nashville has played a physical brand of hockey. They've gotten underneath the skin of the Anaheim Ducks. Anaheim's been a bit undisciplined at times, and it's hurt them. And I think that Anaheim feels like they can play maybe on the edge from time to time because they had the first penalty-killing unit and the first power play unit in the NHL and feel like they can get away with that stuff. But in the playoffs, it's magnified. And last night, Shea Weber was able to break through in the power play for Nashville. So there's storylines everywhere. Home ice doesn't always mean everything, especially with how good the teams are around the league.
Before we let you run, as we're talking to Brian Boucher, last time we had you on, we were having some fun with playoff beards, and we were talking about how you couldn't grow that much facial hair, and neither could I. And we got in the conversation how playoff beards for fans is a little bit overrated. But I do have to ask you about the Rangers, as you were giving me that advice last year. They were down 1-0 in that second game. The offense didn't look too well. Pittsburgh was dominating the possession of the puck, and the Rangers had a little bit of physical play, and they were able to get a few past the goalie for Pittsburgh. What did you see the Rangers do differently when they were in that 1-0 hole after Game 1?
Well, I mean, I think the key to that game was the fact that Lundqvist was able to play, and there's a lot of questions surrounding the Rangers as to whether or not he'd be able to play with the eye injury, and they're obviously depleted on defense with no McDonough and no Dan Girardi. They got a couple of youngsters in McElrath and Brady Shea on the back end. But I think Lundqvist came in and really settled things down, had a good start to the hockey game for them, and I think the Rangers were just able to hang around long enough to get their legs going, and they started to test Jeff Zakoff in goal. I think Zakoff had a good Game 1, but I think the Rangers knew that if they could somehow use their speed to their advantage and test Zakoff, that there'd be a chance they could get to him. And I didn't think the Penguins played all that good a game. I wasn't overly thrilled by the fact that they inserted Evgeny Malkin into the lineup, to be honest with you. I thought the Penguins really were rolling well and playing a great transition game, a great game of pace. And when Malkin comes back into that lineup, he's a big horse, but I wouldn't say that speed is one of his best attributes. And I think it really did mess around with the Penguins' consistency in their offense. So that's an interesting thing when you bring a star into the lineup like that, what it does to your lineup. And I think the Rangers were able to counter that with Lundqvist being really good in the early going and then them being opportunistic after that.
Well, whether it's in between the benches or if you're in the studios in Connecticut, we do appreciate your insight as always, Brian. You've been doing a great job for NBC and NBC Sports, and thanks for a few minutes today.
I appreciate it, guys. Take care.